They're saying I drank again.
Who is saying that?
The court. There's a petition. Emergency change of custody.
Cole, you've been sober 4 years.
4 years, 2 months. I have the chip in my pocket right now.
Then who filed it?
Their family lawyer, Preston, signed it himself.
Preston? The man practically ran your custody agreement.
He says a witness saw me drunk outside the school. Tuesday.
Where were you Tuesday?
On a roof, replacing a heat exchanger. I have the service log.
Then you have proof.
You don't understand. It doesn't matter what's true.
Yeah.
It matters what they already believe about a man like me.
A man like you?
An addict. Once you wear that word, they hang everything on it.
He set the petition on the kitchen table, and his 2 children looked up from their cereal, and he turned it face down so they could not read the top line. Micah was 7, Rosie was 7, twins, with their mother's dark eyes and warm brown skin and their father's stubborn jaw, the best of 2 people who could no longer live in the same state. They had his late nights and his early mornings written into their whole small lives, and they did not yet know that a man in a good suit downtown had just filed a piece of paper designed to take them away from their father before the month was out. Cole Ashby had been a firefighter once. 11 years on the city line, and then one night on a call at a house on Delmar Street, he had not gotten to the back bedroom in time, and a person who had been alive when the alarm rang was not alive when the smoke cleared. He carried that out of the fire the way you carry a burn, under the skin where it does not show but never fully cools. He started drinking to put the sound of it out. It took him 2 years to understand that the drink was a second fire, quieter, burning down everything the first one had left him. It took him a 3rd year, and a sponsor, and a chip he now kept in his pocket like a second heart, to put that one out too. He did not go back to the department. A man does not go back into a burning building after the building has learned his name. He learned a new trade instead, one that kept him near the thing he understood best. Heat and air, and the invisible ways a house can kill you quietly. He installed furnaces and cleaned ducts and replaced the small plastic detectors that sit on ceilings and save lives that never know they were saved. He raised his kids. He went to his meetings. He kept his hands busy and his record clean. And he believed, the way sober people let themselves carefully believe, that the worst of his life was behind him. The petition on the table said otherwise. It requested that Micah and Rosie Ashby be placed immediately in the care of a suitable guardian, pending a full hearing, on the grounds that their father had resumed drinking and posed a danger to their safety. It was signed by Preston Vale, attorney for the children's maternal family. Cole read it 4 times. The words danger and unfit sat in the middle of it like coals, still hot, still able to burn a hole through everything he had rebuilt. I knew this house by heart, every sound in it. The tick of the old furnace he kept perfect out of habit and pride. The particular creak of the top bunk when Rosie turned over. The twins had his whole life stitched into the walls around him, their height marks by the pantry door, the science fair volcano drying on the counter, the 2 backpacks by the front door with their names in his own handwriting on the inside flaps. He had built this quiet, ordinary safety one sober day at a time. And a man he had trusted had just filed a piece of paper engineered to take it apart in an afternoon, using the one wound Cole could never fully close. He should not have been surprised that they came at him through the one word he could never fully wash off, but he was surprised at who held the match. Vale had drawn up the original custody agreement 3 years ago, after the divorce, after Cole's ex-wife moved 2 states away and effectively handed the day-to-day of the twins to the one parent who stayed. Vale had shaken Cole's hand across a conference table and called him, without irony, a good example of recovery. Now that same hand had signed a paper calling him a drunk who endangered his own children. His ex-wife was not behind it. He knew that within a day, because he called her, and the silence on Sophia's end was the silence of a woman as blindsided as he was. She was far away and remarried and tired, and she had trusted the family lawyer to manage the things she no longer had the strength to manage. The trust her own mother had left, the paperwork, the money side of 2 children she loved but could not carry from 3 states away. She had signed where Vale told her to sign. She did not know what she had signed. If you have ever been judged forever by the worst season of your life, by the version of you that you already fought and beat, stay with this one, because Cole Ashby is about to find out that the loudest accuser in the room is almost never the sick one. There is an old rule that firefighters learn early, and it was about to save his children. The thing that is burning is never the thing that is smoking. You look for the quiet one. He started with the log, because the log was true, and the truth was the only ground he had. Every HVAC job he ran generated a service record, time-stamped, the furnace model, the readings, the customer signature at the end. On the Tuesday, the phantom witness had seen him drunk outside the elementary school at 3 in the afternoon. Cole had been 14 miles away on the flat roof of a medical office, replacing a heat exchanger, his boots logged onto the roof at 1:40 and off at 4:10, with a building manager's signature and a photo of the completed weld on the flue. He was not outside any school. He was on a roof with a torch in his hand, stone sober, doing the careful work that sober hands do. He brought it to a family lawyer of his own, a young one named Devin Klein, who took cases the big firms passed on, and Devin looked at the log and nodded slowly, and then said the thing Cole did not want to hear. A log proves where you were. It does not prove what you were. Vale was not going to argue the Tuesday. Vale was going to bury the Tuesday under a dozen other days, a pattern. An accumulation, the slow suggestion that a man like Cole is always one bad night from the bottle, and that the only responsible thing is to move the children somewhere safe while the court sorts it out. Somewhere safe, meaning away, meaning gone, meaning that by the time Cole proved a single lie false, the twins would have been living in another house for 3 months, and the court would call that the new normal and be reluctant to disturb it. That was the trap, and it was elegant, and it did not require Vale to be right about anything. It only required the town to keep believing the word it had already pinned to Cole's chest. So Cole did something that cost him more than the roof work ever had. He went to see Preston Vale. He needed to look at the man and take his measure, and he needed the man to believe he was already beaten, because a frightened predator moves carelessly and a confident one moves slow. He put on his one collared shirt and he drove downtown to the office with Vale's name in gold on the glass, and he made himself into exactly what Vale expected. The shaky recovering addict, hat in hand, come to beg. Vale received him with a sad, warm, terrible kindness. He came around the wide desk and put a hand on Cole's shoulder and steered him into a low chair, the kind that sits a man down below the eye line of whoever stays standing, and he did not sit himself right away. He stood by the window with the light behind him and let a silence do a little work first. Then he said how much this pained him, truly, how the last thing anyone wanted was to hurt the children. He said Cole had done well, remarkably well, for a while. But relapse was a disease, Preston said gently, and no one blamed a sick man for being sick. Perhaps it was time to let people who could offer stability step in, just for a season, until Cole was steady again. He said it all with his eyes soft and his voice low, and it was the most reasonable cruelty Cole had ever sat inside of. Because none of it could be argued with. You cannot argue with a man who is only worried about your children. That was the genius of it. Vale had wrapped the knife in so much concern that reaching for it made you look like the dangerous one. Cole sat with his hat in his hands and his shoulders rounded and called the man sir, and inside he read the room like a scene size up at a working fire. He read the office. The desk too clean, wiped of the ordinary clutter a working lawyer accumulates. The desk of a man erasing his own tracks out of habit now. The framed photograph turned face down on the credenza, which a man only does to a face he cannot bear to look at. A boy's soccer trophy on the shelf with the little gold figure kept when the photo beside it was turned away, and Cole filed that without understanding it yet, and the way Vale's hand went twice to his phone and turned its screen down without checking it, the small compulsive motion of a man waiting on a number he was afraid of, a man who could not stop feeling for the thing even while he preached about the danger of feeling for things. And Cole, who had spent 3 years in rooms full of people learning to tell the truth about their own hunger, saw exactly what Ray had told him he would find. The quiet one, a man on fire behind a calm face, smoke leaking from the seams of him, and no alarm anywhere going off. I did not say a word about it. He thanked the man for his patience, let his voice shake on the way out, and drove home with his hands steady on the wheel. He had come for the man's measure. He had gotten more than he came for. I took what he had seen to the one person who would understand it. Ray Calloway had been Cole's sponsor for 4 years, a heavyset black man in his 60s with 30 years sober and a face the town had long ago filed under lost cause. He had done real time as a young man, gotten clean inside, and come home to a county that never once let him forget the worst thing he had done, no matter how many years he stacked on top of it. He ran a tire shop and a recovery meeting out of the same cinder block building, and he had kept more people alive than the hospital would ever know. People crossed Ray off the way they crossed Cole off, only Ray had been crossed off longer, for more, and cared cared less. He had learned a long time ago that the town's opinion of a man and the truth of a man were two different rooms. Cole sat in the back office of the tire shop and described Preston Vale, the sad, soft voice, the compassion, the concern, and the phone turned screen down twice without a glance. Ray listened the way sponsors listen, without interrupting, and when Cole finished, Ray was quiet a moment. Then he said, "You said he told the court about relapse, talked about it like he knew it." "He did. Sounded like he'd read every pamphlet." "That's the tell." Ray leaned forward. A man who's actually watched addiction up close, in himself or someone he loves, he never talks about it clean like that. He talks about it ugly, ashamed, specific. Ray tapped the desk. Your Mr. Vale talks about it like a brochure because he's not describing a disease he's watched. He's describing a costume he's wearing. He learned the words so he could put them on you. Ray sat back. I've sat across from 1,000 liars in those chairs, Cole, and the ones who lecture you about the hunger are always, always the hungriest ones in the room. Whatever that man is chasing, he's chasing it hard, and he needs everybody looking at you so nobody looks at him. Cole drove home with that sitting in his chest like a coal. The whole town was looking at the smoke. Ray had just told him where to find the fire. That night, Rosie showed him the first true thing without knowing it was true. She had a shoebox of treasures, the way small children do, bottle caps, and a marble and a foil star off a spelling test. She was adding to it before bed, and she held up her newest find for her father to admire, the way she held up everything. It was a small plastic card, glossy, the kind that catches light. Cole took it to be polite, and then went still. It was a membership card for an online betting service, the sort you load with cash at a counter, and it was not his, and it had not been in his house a week ago. Where did you find this, honey? On the driveway, by the man's shoes. What man? The man who came to look at the house when you were at work. Miss Dana let him in. Miss Dana was the afternoon sitter. A man had come, she confirmed, when he called her. Some kind of Inspector Vale's office had sent to photograph the home for the custody file. He had been polite. He had walked every room. He had, Cole realized, been the one to leave a bottle of vodka in the garage cabinet where the court's later search would so conveniently find it. And on his way in or out, from a pocket too full of a gambler's small plastic, he had dropped the one card that a 7-year-old magpie would pick up off the driveway because it caught the sun. The man they sent to plant proof that Cole was an addict had left behind proof of his own hunger. Cole held the little glossy card in his scarred hand and understood fully for the first time what he was actually fighting. Not a lawyer defending a family, a sick man drowning, reaching for his children the way a drowning man reaches for anything that floats. If you have ever watched someone respectable do something monstrous and call it concern, this next part will stay with you, because Cole was about to learn how deep the water under Preston Vale really went. I took the card to Devon, and Devon took it to a woman named Renata Cortez, who did forensic accounting for the county, and who had, it turned out, been quietly uneasy for a year about one particular trust, the Children's Trust. Alma Vega, the twins' abuela, Sophia's mother, had spent 40 years cleaning other people's houses and had died with almost nothing to her name except one fierce decision. Every dollar she had scraped and saved went into a fund in the names of Micah and Rosie, meant to sit untouched until they were grown, so that her grandchildren would start their lives standing on ground she never got to stand on. She had trusted the family attorney to guard it. She had trusted Preston Vale. Renata did not lecture. She spread 3 years of statements across the table and let Cole see it with his own eyes, the way you let a man study the char pattern on a wall and find the point of origin himself. The fund had been bleeding for 18 months. Small withdrawals at first, dressed as routine administrative fees, the kind no one questions. Then larger ones, dressed as investments that went nowhere and were held by entities that turned out not to exist. Renata traced one shell to another to a third, and they all emptied into the same place, and the place had no floor. Nearly $200,000 gone from the accounts of 2 7-year-olds, one careful theft at a time, each one small enough to look like paperwork. And here, Renata tapped one line near the end and let her finger rest on it. A mandatory trust audit, court scheduled, 3 weeks out. She looked at Cole over her glasses, and there was no drama in her voice, which made it worse. If he is not the legal guardian by the time that audit runs, someone independent opens these accounts and he goes to prison. If he is the guardian, he controls the review. He papers over the whole. He explains the withdrawals as decisions he was authorized to make for the children, and he keeps drawing. She set her pen down. He does not want your children, Mr. Ashby. He needs them. They are the only wall left standing between him and a cell. There it was, the whole shape of it, 3 layers deep, and each one worse than the last. The gambling that had eaten him, the theft to feed the gambling, and now the custody grab to bury the theft before the audit could find it. And under all of it, Cole understood, a fourth pressure he could feel but not yet see. Because a man does not steal from small children to service a debt he could simply walk away from. Somebody was collecting. Somebody with a hard date and no mercy and no interest in a lawyer's good name. Preston Vale was not only drowning, someone was standing on the bank with a hand on the back of his neck, holding his head under and counting. Cole learned that pressure had a face 2 nights later, and he learned it the hardest way. He was awake past midnight, working through Renata's statements at the kitchen table, when the thing that had killed a person on Delmar Street 11 years ago walked back into his life through the vents. He smelled it before any alarm could. He would always smell it before the alarm. It was the one gift the worst night of his life had left him, a nose retrained by smoke to know when air had gone wrong. Carbon monoxide has no smell of its own, but a furnace made to fail does not fail clean, and the flue gases that carry the poison have a weight, a faint, sweet wrongness, and Cole's whole body came up out of the chair before his mind had finished the thought. He stood in the kitchen and made himself be still for 1 second, the way they train you, do not run, orient. The furnace was running. It should not have been cycling that hard, not at this hour, not at this setting. And the hall detector, the small plastic sentinel he had installed himself, was silent. It should not have been silent. Silence from a detector in a house that smelled like this was not an absence of danger. It was the loudest alarm of all. I took the stairs 3 at a time. He pulled Micah out of the bottom bunk by the arm and caught Rosie as she rolled off the top half asleep, and he carried them both down and out the front door into the cold, one small face against each side of his neck, their breath coming in the sluggish way that told him how close the margin had been. He set them on the neighbor's steps across the street, out of the air, and he told them, "Do not move." And he went back in low, the old crawl, forearm across his mouth, into the house that was quietly trying to kill his children. He found it fast because he knew exactly where to look. The detector in the hall had been opened, and its battery turned backward in the slot. Positive to negative. Dead but appearing installed. A guardian with its throat cut so quietly that in daylight it would look untouched. And down in the basement, the furnace panel had been loosened, and the flue joint eased just enough, a quarter turn, so that a house would fill slow and silent through the night while a family slept, and in the morning the story would write itself. Ex-firefighter, can't keep a furnace safe. Children in a home with a disabled alarm. One more clean proof that Cole Ashby was exactly the danger the petition said he was. It would have looked in the newspaper like tragic negligence. It had very nearly looked like 2 small coffins and a father who lived to be blamed for them. He stood in his cold yard with his kids wrapped in a work coat, and he shook, and not from the cold. This was the beat where a lesser man breaks, and Cole came close. Because in the garage, where they had planted it, sat the bottle. He had found it that afternoon and not poured it out. He had left it there deliberately, evidence, a thing for the lawyer to explain. And now, in the worst hour of his life, it was 40 feet away in the dark, and it knew his name. The night had done everything it could to break him. They had reached past his own body and gone for his children, and there is a particular fury that has nowhere to go, and there is an old, old door in the back of every recovering mind that opens quietest exactly when the fury has nowhere to go. I went and stood in the garage doorway and looked at it. 4 years and 2 months. He was not going to pretend, later, that his hand did not rise. It rose. He picked the bottle up off the shelf and felt the awful, familiar weight of it. And for one long second, the whole town was right about him, and the petition was true, and every set of eyes that had crossed the street from him for 4 years had seen something real coming. And across the yard, through the neighbor's storm door, 2 small faces watched their father the way children watch to learn what the worst thing does to the people they love. Micah had his arm around Rosie. They were not watching the house that had almost killed them. They were watching him. He carried the bottle to the utility sink and he poured every drop of it down the drain. Slow, deliberate, watching it go, making himself witness the whole of it. He set the empty glass on the workbench where the morning light would find it. Then he went back across the cold street to his children and got down on his knees on the concrete and gathered them both in. Some men put the second fire out once and believe it is done. It is never done. You put it out again in the cold at midnight with your hands shaking and your children watching on the one night when no living soul would have blamed you for letting it burn. That is the only sober that is real, not the kind you keep when it is easy. The kind you choose again at the bottom because 2 people are learning from your hands what a man does with the worst thing in him. He did not call it in as an accident. He called Devin, and Devin called Renata, and Renata knew which county inspector owed nothing to anyone downtown. By dawn, that inspector was on his knees in Cole's basement, and he documented the reversed battery in the hall detector and the eased flue joint on the furnace, and he wrote the word tampering in an official report with a case number that Preston Vale did not assign and could not quietly make disappear. It was the first thing in the whole affair that Vale did not control, and Cole knew it the moment he watched the inspector photograph that small backward battery. He understood something else too, standing in his cold kitchen while the sun came up. This was not Preston Vale's work. Vale schemed clean. Everything Vale did was legal on its face, deniable, wrapped in paper and concern, and a man that careful would never in his life crawl into a basement and ease a flu joint over 2 sleeping children. This was a different hand entirely. Somebody with no suit and no reputation to protect had reached into the house, and that meant the thing Cole had only sensed behind Vale now had a body, and boots, and a reason. The reason came clear as Cole thought it through. The sabotage served 2 masters at once. For Vale, it smeared Cole one more time, a firefighter who could not keep a home safe. More fuel for the unfit story. But for the man Vale owed, it was a message aimed the other way, at Vale himself. It said the waiting was over. It said, look how easily my people walk into a house at night, so imagine how easily we walk into yours. The furnace was a warning shot fired through Cole's family and meant for Vale's ears. 2 children had nearly died so that a debt collector could remind a lawyer what the interest really was. And that was the thread Cole meant to pull because Vale was drowning. But somebody was standing on the bank with a boot on his neck, and that somebody had just left fingerprints in Cole's basement. The days after ran under 2 clocks at once. The petition had won Vale a temporary order first. The way these things go, a judge signing an emergency measure on the strength of the sworn allegations alone, leaving the twins with Cole for now, but setting a fast evidentiary hearing that would decide everything for real. The custody hearing sat at the end of that week, and somewhere across town, Cole now knew Vale's own deadline sat in the same week, the hard date when whoever he owed would stop waiting. 2 men, 2 countdowns, wound around the same 2 children the county thought this was about. And every step Cole took toward the light, Vale took a step back at him out of the dark. Cole lined up the sitter to testify about the inspector who had walked the house. Miss Dana was frightened but willing, and she remembered the man clearly. His good coat, the way he had spent too long in the garage. Then overnight, something reached her. By the next morning, she had been reminded somehow of an old immigration question about her sister, a question that had never once come up in 3 years. And she stopped answering her phone. And when Cole knocked, she spoke to him through a chain door and asked him, near tears, not to come back. He did not blame her. He knew exactly what it felt like to have a soft, quiet hand close around the one thing you could not risk. Cole submitted the roof log, clean and time-stamped, and Vale did not even contest the Tuesday. Instead, he produced a second witness and then a third. 2 of them were ordinary people whose soft, uncertain memories had been gently shaped. A man at a gas station fairly sure he had seen Cole unsteady at the pump. A woman from the church who thought, now that she was asked, that Cole had seemed off at the fall festival. But the third was not vague at all, and that one worried Cole more because the third witness was a contractor named Grady Holt, who swore with real confidence to seeing Cole drinking from a flask on a job site. Holt was certain and specific and lying, and it took Devon 2 days to find the reason. Holt owed Preston Vale a personal debt of his own, a quiet loan from a year back, and Vale had forgiven it the same week the man's memory turned so crisp. The fog was not all accident. Some of it had been bought, one obligated man at a time, and a bought lie wears the face of confidence, which is exactly why juries believe it. Renata pulled the trust records to build the theft timeline, and the county server that held 2 crucial months of statements went down for maintenance for 1 single day, and the statements came back corrupted, unreadable, gone. Each thing Cole built, Vale erased, quietly, legally, 1 clean deletion at a time, betting that the fog would hold and the clock would run out and the children would be placed in a safe home somewhere while everyone sorted it out, and that by the time the truth was fully assembled, it would be too late to matter. But Cole was still following the other thread, the one from his own basement. The betting card in Rosie's treasure box was tied to a cash counter at a check-cashing storefront on the industrial edge of town, and Cole sat in his work van across the street from it for 2 evenings, watching, the way he used to watch a building for the hidden seat of a fire. On the second evening he saw the man, he knew him at once, not by any record, but the way you know the quiet danger in a room. Tall, unhurried, in a good coat that was not quite a suit, shaking hands with the counter clerk like he owned the lease and maybe the block. A driver waited for him with the engine running. When the man crossed to the car, he paused and turned his head and looked directly across the street at Cole's van, at Cole. For 1 long, unbothered second. He did not glare. He did not hurry. He simply logged Cole's face the way a man logs a thing he may need to deal with later, and then he got in the car and was driven away. Cole never got his full name that season. Devon turned up only a surname, Sutter, attached to nothing that would stick. A man who ran money and never touched it, who owned the debt that owned Preston Vale, and who had sent someone into a child's house to make a point. He was the fire behind the fire, and he did not leave marks the way Vale did. But he had looked at Cole across a street, and Cole had looked back, and both of them understood the account between them had been opened and was not going to be closed this week. That was a reckoning for another season. For now, Cole had a hearing to survive, and a debt collector who now knew his face was one more reason to survive it fast. On the night before the hearing, Cole sat at the kitchen table with the empty bottle glass and the little glossy betting card and his sobriety chip laid out in a row in front of him, 3 objects. And he understood that on paper, he was still going to lose. The fog was too thick. The word on his chest was too old and too heavy. A judge looking at a recovering alcoholic and a respected attorney would reach for the safe choice. And the safe choice was to move the children. And the safe choice was wrong. And being right had never once been enough for a man like him. And Micah climbed into the chair beside him, 7 years old, still awake, long past when he should have been, and looked at the 3 objects laid out on the table. He did not understand what they were, but he understood his father's face, the way children always understand the one face they study most. He reached out and put his small hand flat on top of the chip, the way you cover something to keep it from blowing away, and he looked up. "Is this the one that helps you not be sad?" Cole had never told the twins what the chip was. He had only ever said it was something that helped him on the hard days, and they had accepted that the way children accept the shape of a parent's life without needing its details. "Something like that," he said now. "Then you should hold it tomorrow." Micah said it simply, the way children hand you the answer you have been circling for hours, so they can see you have it, so they know you're not hiding it, out of the mouth of a child. Cole had spent the whole week planning to bury the subject of his drinking, to keep it as far from that courtroom as a lawyer could push it, to fight the word addict by pretending it had never been true. His 7-year-old son had just told him to do the exact opposite. Walk in holding the worst thing about yourself, out in the open, in your open hand, where no one can use it as a secret because you have already made it plain. You do not fight a fire by swearing there is no smoke. You point at the smoke. You name it out loud. You show them where the quiet danger really lives, and you trust that the truth, said plainly by a man with nothing left to hide, burns cleaner than any lie a good suit can buy. He closed his hand around the chip and did not let go of it for the rest of the night. The hearing was held in a county room too small for what it would decide. Preston Vale came in a charcoal suit with his soft, sad eyes, and his reputation walking in front of him like a bodyguard. And he did not look at Cole, because to Vale, Cole was a problem already solved, a sick man about to be gently managed off the board. He had the fog, he had the town, he had a bottle in an evidence bag and a stack of uncertain witnesses and a battered old word that did all his arguing for him. He nodded to the referee. He was, everyone in that room agreed without saying it, the responsible party here. Vale's argument was a masterpiece of concern. He never once called Cole a bad man. He called him a sick one, which is harder to fight, because you cannot get angry at it without looking like exactly the danger they say you are. He spoke of the tragedy of relapse in a voice thick with what sounded for all the world like compassion. He said he had known Cole for years, had admired his fight, had drawn up the very custody arrangement that let this good, struggling man raise his children. And that was what made this so painful, he said, his voice catching, because he had hoped never to be the one standing here. He asked the court for nothing harsh. He asked only that 2 innocent children be kept somewhere safe and steady while their father found his footing again, just for a season, just to be sure, It was devastating, and it was devastating precisely because it was gentle. Cruelty you can point at. Concern slides in under the door. Cole watched the referee's face and saw it happen, saw the slow tilt toward the reasonable, careful, catastrophic choice. Move the children now, sort the truth out later. No one is ever fired for being cautious with a child, and the caution would become the new fact, and the new fact would become the final one. And Cole would spend years proving a negative while his kids grew up in another man's house. He could feel the whole thing closing over his head like water or like smoke, the quiet kind that puts you to sleep before you ever know you are in danger. Then Cole stood up, the ex-firefighter in his one-collared shirt the chip held in his open hand where the whole room could see it, and he did the thing his 7-year-old son had told him to do. He did not hide the fire. He walked straight into it. He told them about Delmar Street, about the back bedroom and the person he did not reach in time and the sound that had followed him out of the smoke and into every quiet moment for 11 years. He told them plainly, without excuse and without asking for any, that he had tried to drown that sound in a bottle for 2 years, and that it had cost him his marriage and nearly his life. He told them that 4 years and 2 months ago he had begun the daily unglamorous work of putting it out, one morning at a time, and that he had not had a drink since. Not one. Not on the night someone reversed the battery in his children's smoke detector and eased the joint on his furnace and left a bottle in his garage to be found by a court, especially not that night. He set the roof log on the table, time-stamped and signed. He set down the county inspector's report with the word tampering in it. The one document in the whole affair that Preston Vale had not been able to control. He set down Renata's trust statements, 18 months of careful theft from the accounts of 2 7-year-old children, and then he set down the small, glossy betting card, and he told the room, quietly, where his daughter had found it, on the driveway, by the shoes of the man Preston Vale had sent to photograph the home. The room's attention began to turn, slowly, the way a crowd at a fire turns from the smoke to the flame, from the loud, familiar accusation to the quiet man in the good suit who had gone very still in his chair. For 4 years, that room, that town, that whole county had looked at Cole Ashby and seen the smoke, the old word, the easy story. Now, for the first time, every head in the room began to turn the other way, toward the seam where the real fire had been burning quietly the entire time. Cole's lawyer put the card into evidence, named the betting account it was tied to, and asked the court to compel its records. Then he called Ray Calloway, and the heavy-set ex-convict the town had written off decades ago walked to the stand in his one clean shirt and was sworn in, and he was asked how a man could tell the difference between someone who had lived with addiction and someone only wearing the word. Ray answered it the way he had answered it to Cole in the back of the tire shop. The real ones talk about it ugly and ashamed and specific, he said. The fakes talk about it like a brochure because they learned the words to put on somebody else. He had heard Mr. Vale's speech about the tragedy of relapse repeated back to him, Ray said. And in 30 years of sitting across from people at the bottom, he had never once heard a person who had truly been there describe it that smoothly. A man who talks that clean about the hunger, Ray said, is usually the hungriest one in the room. The fog began to burn off. Renata took the stand and walked the room through the shape of it. The gambling, the theft, the audit 3 weeks out. The exact reason a drowning man might need to become the legal guardian of the very children he had been robbing. The uncertain witnesses started to look less like proof and more like what they were, a mist a desperate man had paid for. And for the first time in the whole affair, Preston Vale sat at his table without a clean, quiet answer ready in his mouth. He almost still won. A man like that is never beaten on the first swing, and his own lawyer moved fast, objecting, demanding foundation, moving to strike the child's account of the driveway as unreliable, offering to explain the trust withdrawals as unconventional but authorized investments, promising documentation that would clear it all up given time. Given time. The same weapon he had used all along, delay, the fog, the reluctance of a careful court to disturb things. And it was working. The referee wavered. Time, after all, was reasonable to ask for. What broke him was not the evidence. The evidence would have taken weeks to fully close, and Vale had bought his way through weeks before. What broke Preston Vale was the 2 children sitting in the back of the room. His own lawyer had told them to bring the twins, a common tactic, small faces, to remind the court of stability and warmth. Micah and Rosie sat in the back in their good clothes, swinging their feet, and at the moment Vale rose to ask for more time, to ask the court to move the children somewhere safe while everyone sorted it out. Rosie waved at him. Just a small wave, because she knew him. He had been at her mother's family table her whole short life. He had held both of them, once when they were newborns in a hospital room, back before any of the rest of it, back when he was still only a tired good man who had not yet lost his own son and gone looking for something to fill the hole with. She waved, and she smiled at him, the man who had put a bottle in her father's garage and turned off the alarm above her bed. And Preston Vale, halfway through the sentence that would have taken those 2 children away from the one parent who stayed, stopped. He looked at the little girl waving at him. Something in his face came apart, the seam finally splitting, the smoke finally finding the open air. His voice failed. He sat down, slowly, in the middle of his own argument, and he put one hand over his mouth, and he did not finish. His lawyer prompted him. He shook his head. And into the silence of that too small room he said quietly, to no one, to the girl, "I can't. God help me. I can't do it to them." It was not a confession that would hold up alone, but it did not have to. It opened the door, and the evidence walked through it. The court ordered the trust frozen and independently audited that same week, and the betting card records came back and tied straight to Vale. And the tampering report stood on its own, and the fog witnesses evaporated the instant there was any cost to lying under oath. Within the month, the whole structure came down. The theft, the staged relapse, the Inspector Vale had sent to plant the bottle and drop the card. Vale did not fight any of it. Whatever had flickered in him when the little girl waved stayed lit, and he seemed almost relieved to stop running from it. He pleaded to what he had done and would not let his own lawyer soften a word. When the court asked him, at the end, why he had stopped in the very middle of winning, he was quiet a long time. Then he said that he had lost one child already years ago and that he had spent every day since trying not to feel it, and that a card table had been the only place the feeling went away, and that he had told himself the children's money was a loan he would repay before anyone noticed. He said he had almost believed it, and he said that when the girl waved at him, he understood that he had become the fire he thought he was only borrowing from. None of it excused a single thing. He had robbed 2 children, smeared an innocent man before the whole town, and let someone reach into a sleeping house and turn off the alarm above their beds. He went to prison for all of it, and the court made sure the sentence held every piece. But by the end, even Cole understood the thing the whole case had been about from the first page. He and Preston Vale had taken the same wound, years apart. A death neither of them could stop, and a fire each of them went looking to put out with the wrong thing. A bottle for one man and a card table for the other. The only difference between them was the part no one photographs. One of them had crawled 4 years back toward the light on his hands and knees, unglamorous, one morning at a time, and worn the shame of it openly. The other had put on a charcoal suit and let the fire eat him from the inside, where the smoke would not show, and pointed at his neighbor's old scars to keep anyone from smelling his own. The man behind Vale was another matter. The state got the hand that had done the actual work, a subordinate whose boots matched a print in Cole's basement and who folded fast once the tampering charge landed. But Sutter himself stayed exactly where men like him always stay. One clean layer back, no money in his own name, no order in his own voice, a surname and a shadow, and nothing a prosecutor could close a hand around. He had reached into a sleeping house over a debt, and he was still out there running the same money through the same quiet counters, and he now knew Cole Ashby's face, and Cole knew his. Cole did not let it go. He kept the file. He kept asking. Some fires you put out in a night, and some you only learn the location of and bank and wait for. That reckoning was coming. It just was not coming this week. The children stayed. The court did not move them for a season or a week or a night. The trust was made whole from what the state recovered, held now by an administrator with no hunger of his own, sitting untouched again the way a grandmother had meant it to, waiting patiently for 2 kids to grow into it. And Cole's ex-wife called him from 2 states away. Late on the night, it was finally over. She cried on the phone for a long time before she could speak. She had trusted the family lawyer to carry the things she no longer had the strength to carry, and he had used that trust to reach for her children, and she would carry the guilt of having signed where he told her to sign for a long time. They talked longer that one night than they had in 3 years. 2 tired people who had both been fooled by the same quiet man, and only one of whom had been close enough and sober enough and hurt enough in exactly the right way to smell the smoke coming off him before the house filled. The town looked at Cole differently after that, and it was a strange coat to wear. People who had crossed the street from the recovering drunk for 4 years now wanted to shake the ex-firefighter's hand. He took it the way he took most things, without correction, because he had never gotten sober for the town, and he was not going to start living for it now. What mattered had happened at a kitchen table, with a chip under a small hand, and in a cold yard at midnight with a bottle going down a drain that no one but his own children would ever see. On a Saturday that spring, Cole took Micah and Rosie on a job with him, a simple one, a young family across town who needed new detectors run through the whole house. He let the twins carry the small plastic units, one in each hand, holding them like the treasures they were. He lifted the kids up one at a time to press each unit into its bracket on the ceiling, and he showed them how to test it. How to hold the button until the sharp tone came, how to open the back and check that the battery sat the right way. Positive to positive. The one small thing that decides whether a house full of sleeping people wakes up. He thought while he worked about how a house tries to kill you. Never loudly. Never the way you brace for. It is not the roaring fire that gets most people. It is the quiet gas with no smell in the dark while you sleep. The danger that disables the one thing meant to warn you and then waits. His whole trade, he realized, both of his trades, the one that nearly broke him and the one that rebuilt him, had been the same single job all along. Find the quiet one. Find the danger that does not announce itself. The fire behind the calm face. The smoke that leaks from the seams of a man in a good suit. And get the people you love out of the air before it takes them. Rosie held her ear close to the detector she had just installed and pressed the button, and the tone went off, loud and clean and alive, and she laughed out loud at it, delighted, this small, fierce guardian that screamed exactly when it was supposed to. Micah looked up at his father with the whole seriousness a 7-year-old can carry. "So it yells about the bad air, even when you can't smell it." "Especially when you can't smell it," Cole said. "The dangerous thing is always the quiet one. That's the whole job. You find the quiet one before it finds you." He stood in a stranger's hallway with a child on each side of him and the little alarm still ringing bright in Rosie's hand. And he did not say anything else, because some things you do not narrate. You just install them and you test them and you let them stand guard over the people asleep in the dark. The thing that is burning is never the thing that is smoking. Cole Ashby had learned that truth in a fire and forgotten it in a bottle and learned it again in a courtroom from the wave of a 7-year-old girl. The loudest accuser in the room is almost never the sick one. The steadiest voice, the best suit, the most reasonable concern. That is exactly where you look last and should have looked first. If this one reached something in you tonight, send it to the person everyone was a little too quick to write off. The one who fell and fought their way back up on their hands and knees and never got the credit for the climb. Tell them you noticed. Tell them you always knew the quiet one in the room was never them. It might be the neighbor who crossed the street from you for years. It might be the man in the good suit who never crossed it. It might be you at a kitchen table, still standing, still sober, still here, holding the door shut against the quiet thing while everyone else watches the smoke.